everyone, Laura Berg here from My Smart Hands, and today I have with me Nadine Thornhill, who is a sexuality educator, and you can find her at nadinethornhill.com. And today we're talking about consent. Now, this is a weird topic because nobody talked to us about consent when we were kids.
No, not at all.
No,
not at all.
It's sort of a new, not a new concept, but a newly discussed concept.
Yeah, I think that people are realizing that it's a conversation that we need to be having more.
Right.
And sometimes people assume that, well, consent is not a conversation for children. It's not something we need to teach children because it's about having partnered sex, which is something that, happens when they're much older. But in fact, we know from research that when we start teaching about consent when they're younger, they're better able to apply those lessons and concepts when they become older and when they're in sexual relationships. And it's actually not really about sex at all when they're little.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that because I really want to teach my children the concept of consent and being the owner of their own bodies and being able to say no if they're in uncomfortable situations. And, but I'm thinking, well, when do I start talking to them about that? And I love that. I love that if you start at an early age, you sort of ingrain that in them and then it's just there.
Exactly. And consent is really it's a life skill. So it definitely applies and it's essential in sexual situations with other people, but it's really essential in all sorts of situations where we're relating and interacting with other people. We have to know how to respect other people, how to respect their boundaries, and how to take care of them. So it's a good skill to teach even young kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so today, parents, we're talking about really how to teach our kids consent. So little kids, tell me, what do you do?
Okay, so we're all the owners of our own bodies, and I often talk about consent as being like your home. So with little kids, if their bodies are their homes, they're the owners, but as parents, we are the superintendents.
Wait a second. I love that. I'm going to use that actually. Yes, you are the owner of your body, but I'm the superintendent.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Because we need to, do things and take care of them because they're not able to do certain things for themselves when they're young. So, for example, my son may not want to have a needle put in his arm when he has to get a shot at the doctor, but as the superintendent of his body, that is the decision that I have made for him.
Right.
To take care of him. However, there are certainly decisions that even little kids can make and ways that we can teach them that they are the ultimate owners. So let's say, for example, you have someone coming over to your house to visit your family. So, it could be a grandparent, could be an aunt, it could be a good family friend. And they say to your child, "Oh, come here and give me a hug." And you notice your child pull back, or they just say no, which is what my son would do. And instead of, pushing your child and saying, you need to give that person a hug because they love you, you can say, okay, you don't have to. You can make an alternative suggestion. You can say, well, do you want to give them a handshake? Do you want to give them a high five? You can blow them a kiss. And they can say yes or no to that. And if they don't want to do even that, you can say, all right, well, can you please just say hello or just wave? But what we're doing in that moment is that we're supporting their expression that I'm not comfortable with this kind of touch, I'm not comfortable with this sort of interaction, and we're telling them that it's okay for them to express that. And and we're setting up that expectation that when they express that, that should be respected and honored.
Right. So I think parents, this is key, is don't make your child do something that makes them uncomfortable, because then you're almost teaching them that their consent is not important.
Yes, what you can convey if you force them to touch or hug someone they don't want to is that the other person's happiness or desire is more important than their own. Yeah, and I do want to acknowledge that it can be uncomfortable for us as parents sometimes when we feel like our children aren't being as affectionate or polite as we would like them to be. But as the adults, we can deal with that discomfort a lot more than our children can deal with the discomfort of being told that they have to touch someone that they don't need to touch.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, I love that. So that's one easy way that we can start to teach them that consent is a thing and that people do need their consent and it's okay for them not to give their consent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then moving through life as they get a little bit older.
Yep. Another area where there's an opportunity to teach lessons around consent is when our children are a little bit older and they start interacting with their friends and their peers. And so this is the flip side of consent. We often talk about, consent as, establishing boundaries and putting a stop to things. There's also the other side where when there's consent, it's fun and people can feel really good and happy. So when we're watching them playing with their friends, if we notice that, hey, you know what, like everyone was playing together nicely and everyone was having a good time, not necessarily, we don't have to interrupt the activity, but, maybe later that night at dinner or at bedtime or even the next day, you can say, hey, you know what? I noticed like all your friends were having fun together and that's great. I love that you made sure that everyone was enjoying the game. That's really important that, when we're having fun with other people, we want everyone to be having fun. You can also talk about it if you see the opposite happen, which again happens a lot with kids, that, one kid wants to do one thing and the other kid doesn't want to. And so the child who's really gung-ho and is like, let's play Legos, let's play tag, let's play, let's climb the tree, can sometimes, become so enthusiastic. They're like, come on, like, let's do it. If you just do it, we're going to have a good time. And if you notice that, you can also step in and say, you know what? When you have a friend over, or you're playing with a friend, we want everyone to have a good time. And they're telling you that this is not going to be fun for them. So let's find something that's fun for both of you, or all of you. And again, if you transfer that to when they're older in a sexual situation, again, you want that situation to be fun for everyone involved. Everyone should feel good. Everyone should have pleasure. It's not just about your own pleasure when you bring another person into it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's great because if you think about it, what you're doing is you're teaching your child to be aware of other people and other people's consent, as we're talking about consent, but in such a subtle way. You're teaching them to be respectful of other people's feelings.
Absolutely. And I love that you bring that up because I think a lot of parents do that and they just don't realize that, hey, that is something that can later on be applied to consent in a sexual context. Definitely. There's also, and I'm just thinking of this as you bringing it up, there's also talking to your kids about, what? If someone doesn't want to do what you want to do, and this is absolutely what you want to do, you can also go off and do that by yourself.
Yes. And we have actually had play dates where somebody wanted to color and somebody wanted to play Play-Doh, and you know what? I say, just go do your own thing then.
Yeah,
you don't have to always agree on the same thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
So something else that is a key component to consent is called emotional resilience, which is a jargony term. I'm not going to use that with your kids, but it basically means being able to deal with difficult things in life and the difficult feelings that can come up. So in life, we can have situations where we had expectations and things are different, or we're embarrassed, we're uncomfortable, we're afraid. And emotional resilience just means sort of being able to have those feelings and move through those feelings and to be okay on the other end. And so there are all kinds of ways that we can help kids do that. When they're on the younger side, so for example, let's say something really disappointing happens for your child. Let's say there's a kid at the playground who didn't want to play with them and it really hurt their feelings and they're crying and they're sad. What we can do is, often the impulse is to rush in and talk to them about all the ways it's going to be okay and all the ways that, it's like, oh, well, maybe they were just having a bad day and there's lots of other kids you can play with, or I'll play with you, or we can do this instead, because it hurts when our kids are hurting. We don't like that. It hurts so badly.
So much.
But what we can actually do instead is, number one, we can help them name the feelings they're having. So instead of rushing in and trying to make it okay, say, you know what? I know that really hurt your feelings and you're really sad right now. And, when somebody doesn't want to play with me, it makes me sad too. And we can even just hold them if that's what they want and need and let them cry, because that's them processing that emotion. And then when they've moved through that and they've calmed down and they're feeling a little better, we can say to them, you know what, you were really sad before, but look, now you feel okay.
So I actually do that with my kids. I acknowledge their feeling. I'll say, I know that you're sad right now, and I would be sad too if that happened. And I think that's really important as parents, is to not just say, oh, you're gonna be okay, everything's gonna be fine, let's move on, I'll play with you, but to acknowledge that your feelings are legitimate. And even more so, I love this because I don't do this and I'm going to start doing this, is that when your kids feel good after, to say, remember you were feeling kind of yucky and now you feel good? See, it passes.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, you can just point out to them that, bad feelings they're not fun, but they don't last forever.
Right.
It's like the weather.
It does feel, and even as adults.
Oh, yeah.
Like something happens, I'm like, I'm never going to feel okay.
Absolutely. I'm never going to get over this. And but you always do it. Sooner or later, you will get over it and you will be okay.
You do.
So what happens, and where consent can get messy sometimes, it's not always necessarily that somebody's deliberately trying to hurt their partner, but if they're in a situation where they're afraid of feeling badly, sex is a really vulnerable activity. We're not always comfortable talking about sex. We're often naked. We're probably going to feel at least embarrassed and disappointed if we want to do something and our partner say, you know what, I'm not so into that. So when a person is afraid of feeling bad, sometimes what they'll do is that instead of asking and checking in with their partner, they'll sort of do this thing where they'll I'm just going to do stuff to them or with them and kind of cross my fingers and hope that if it's not okay, they'll say something. But if you've done something that's already not okay, you've already violated that person's boundary, which in sex can be really harmful and unpleasant. And so if you have emotional resilience, you're much more able to say, okay, you know what? I may feel uncomfortable asking for what I want, but it's okay. I can survive that. I may be embarrassed or disappointed if they don't want to do what I want to do, but it's okay. I'm not going to die. It's not going to destroy me. It's just not going to be fun. And then I'll be okay. And so that makes it much easier for them to honor the other person's boundaries and to ask for and get consent before they do something sexual.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense. Like sitting here talking to you, I feel like my mind has just opened up immensely, because I think that, parents, let's look at the 3 things really that we can take away from this interview with kids. So
number 1, you're the superintendent, but your kids are the owners of their body. Number 2 is teaching them to make sure that everyone's having fun and having a good time. And then number 3 is emotional resilience.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Nadine, so much for sharing your information and knowledge with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
This was great. And if you have any questions for Nadine, please leave them in the comments. I can either answer them or I can email Nadine and ask her to jump on. We're in touch now, so we can certainly do that. And as always, please subscribe to my channel. And thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.